I don't know what you do for fun, Luann. I know you and Bobby love music, and
Yeah.
you guys are like fun, and but what I do for fun is I read books on the history of the IRS.
Okay.
Um, and I got to be honest, I read something recently, and it was like it hit me like a pile of bricks. Of course, the IRS. I think sometimes people think we threw a bunch of tea into the Boston Harbor, and then we won a war against a bunch of dainty redcoats, and then we created our own constitution, and then and then we like combined our states into a union, and then we just started giving money to New York, and then when they moved the capital to Washington D.C. and like people just think like we got rid of a king, and then we turned around and created our own nation,
Mm.
and we immediately just began paying federal income tax.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not the case. In fact, America grew to the superpower that it was with no federal income tax. The IRS, the federal income tax, started in the year 1913. 1913. Now, guess what the highest tax bracket was in the year 1913? 7%.
Hmm.
Guess how many pages a tax return was in the year 1913?
One or two.
One. One. Whether you were John D. Rockefeller or a chimney sweep in Mary Poppins. I think that's a little before
I
1913,
think
but
so.
whether you were John D. Rockefeller or someone changing shoes on a horse, your tax return was one page. In fact, the tax code, which is now 3 times the size of a King James Bible, if you had an average reading pace and you read for 1 hour a day, you wouldn't even be able to read it in 1 year. And guess what they would do at the end of the year? They'd change all the rules on you. All right? You would literally need a wheelbarrow to bring the tax code into my office right now. Or like a group of strongmen from Finland. Several of them. Maybe anyone got that reference. I don't know. So the highest tax bracket in 1913 was 7%. The lowest tax bracket was 4%. What happened after 1913? You had the Roaring Twenties and
Mm-hmm.
World War
World War
One, World War Two.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out world wars are incredibly expensive because at the end of maybe I need to say that again, okay, for all of our liberal listeners who are like just chomping at the bit to start World War III with Russia and China and all of a sudden the kumbaya liberals of the world all want to start World War III. I don't know what happened, like this flipping of the deck here, Luann. And maybe it's just partisan politics. Maybe if Trump was still president, I'd be like, yeah, let's fight the Russians. I don't think I would. I'm like a hippie from Woodstock all of a sudden, like a capitalist pig hippie. How did this happen? I don't want to start wars. And I'll tell you why I don't want to start a war. Because I just watch us lose a war that we fought for 25 years against guys wearing robes and sandals who don't use toilet paper. Maybe that was politically incorrect to say out loud. Oh, and I also witnessed us leave billions of dollars of helicopters and guns, and I watched us fly out of that war zone like our hair was on fire, running away in retreat. So why would I watch that a couple of years ago and then 1 year later go, yeah, let's start a war with Russia in winter? Yeah, those Chinese. Let's pick a fight with them too while we're at it. I didn't know this segment was going to get so heavy, but you see, I came in here, I was happy, I was peaceful, and I start talking about the IRS, and that happens. So anyways, at the end of World War II, our debt to GDP ratio reached 119%. What does that mean? That would mean GDP is our income. Let's boil this down to like a real world example here, okay? So that would mean our income was $100,000 as a family, husband, wife, they make $100,000 a year. But we have credit card debts of $119,000. Our debt is 119% of our GDP, okay? So, how did the government respond to a debt to GDP ratio of 119%? Where were the tax brackets in the 1950s and the 1960s?
They were high. I remember that.
They were high. In fact, the highest tax bracket was 94%. 94% of your income went to the government because our politicians understood that having debt to GDP ratios that high was incredibly dangerous to our economic prosperity and our country's future. Now, also, keep in mind, our debt reached that level because we fought a world war against a clear adversary who is exterminating a population of people. And after world dominance. So we threw everything in the kitchen sink at it. We had pinup girls selling war bonds. We had children working in factories because their little fingers were able to fit into bullet shells. There was a spirit of community that this is the good fight that we must fight. People were drafted. And our debt to GDP went to 119%. In fact, the lowest tax bracket through the 1950s and the 1960s was over 20%. And the highest bracket was never below 70% for both of those decades. Fast forward till today. Okay? Today, we're $31 trillion in debt. Our debt to GDP ratio is 129%. So we have $129,000 of credit card debt to our $100,000 of annual income. What is our highest tax bracket? 37%. When do Trump's tax reforms expire? End of 2025, January 1, 2026. Our politicians will have to enact new tax legislation. You think taxes are going up?
Yep.
I hate to say it, Luann. Oh, God, I don't want to say this out loud. They kind of have to. But here's what I want in response, right? I want accountability to my tax dollars. Of course, we just reached a debt ceiling compromise, which was like nothing burger. I saw a little meme from Pawn Stars where it's like, I'm going to decrease spending by $50 billion, but I'm going to increase spending by $4 trillion. Like, it's the best I can do.
Yeah.
Basically what happened with the debt ceiling debate. I would gladly pay more in taxes if I knew my money was being utilized in a thoughtful way to pay down our debt. Or if I knew my money was being utilized in a way to give people a helping hand up who need a hand up, not a handout. And I knew my money wasn't going to countries that hate us. I knew my money wasn't going towards a war effort that we have nothing to do with. I think most all red-blooded, don't tread on me, God-fearing, flag-waving conservatives, even the libertarians of the world, which I liken myself to, would gladly pay more in taxes if they knew the revenue, that the government likes to call it, was going towards admirable causes. And debt elimination, in my opinion, is an admirable cause. Giving money to people on disability who are able-bodied and just don't want to work because they have a college degree and all the work that would actually be suitable for them, they're above, is not admirable. Giving money to people who want to immigrate to our country illegally and not wait in line like all of the other individuals is not admirable uses of money. Giving our money to, social workers in San Francisco so they could build drug dens and give drugs to people that are safer so people can live in squalor on the streets is not an admirable use of my money. Sending $100 billion to Ukraine when we can use that money to literally put every college-age kid to college for 2 years. We did the math on that on a previous show. is not a good use of our money. We also did the math that you can literally, the rage right now is reparations,
Mm-hmm.
You can literally send every African American in this country to college for free with the money we just sent to Ukraine. Boy, that's tough, right?
Wow.
Like a meme where you got the two red buttons. Like, what do I do now? Like, I want reparations, but I want to support the Ukrainian war effort. Anyways, guys, taxes are going up. And what you need to do as a retiree is recognize that right this minute, you are in a tax advantageous era. And most of you, even I'm talking to you 60 and 70-year-olds, most of you have spent your entire life in a tax code, your income earning years of your life at least, in a tremendously low tax realm, right? Because once Reagan got elected, JFK was the one who started lowering taxes, and then Reagan, of course, put that on supercharge. Most of your life where you actually earned a decent income, you've had really low tax rates. And I happen to think that those rates are going to go up. And here's the scary thing, Luann. I think they're going to go up on account of a manufactured crisis. We just learned, because of COVID, how spineless we are as a society when a crisis is upon us. How quickly we listen to bureaucrats that have zero level of believability. How quickly we gather into herds and shame the person who sees the world through a different lens. How ugly we can be to our neighbor if the media, big pharma, big tech, and the government all come together as a group with a unified message. So I happen to believe we've got an insurmountable amount of debt. We've got a government that's drunk on spending. And we've got a tax code that is too generous. In the government's eyes, it's too generous to citizens. So I can see a bunch of slimy politicians putting their heads together going, well, we can sell this if we manufacture a crisis and we fix people's eyes on where taxes were back in the 1950s and the 1960s. The problem here is we had a world war that we had just fought for taxes to get that high. The world war that we're having right now is a war on drunken spending and a war on bureaucracy. Because our money right now has gone to politicians and pet projects and pork and idiotic things. And to even hint at the idea of slowing our spending down, you're called like, oh, he stands for austerity. No, I stand for not spending more than we make. That's not austerity. That's common sense. That's level-headedness. My God. I'm a radical conservative, though, Luann. A deranged, insane MAGA conservative. And look, look, for all you MAGA folks out there, I voted for Trump twice. He didn't do a good job of managing our treasury either. He spent more than we made. I just want a sensible person to come in and go, all right, folks, like the adult in the room. All right, guys, here's our GDP. And here's our budget. Like, we need Dave Ramsey to run for, like, he'd be cutting up our credit cards and stuff. Here's what we make. Here's what we spend. Here's how much we owe. We're going to spend a little less than we make, and the excess is going to go towards paying down the debt. Adam, that's too simple. You don't understand how complex. Oh, yes, I do. It's not that. You don't need a PhD in mathematics to understand you shouldn't spend more than you make.